Hello, welcome to the sideboard here at the StarCityGames.com Standard Open in Atlanta. I'm Nick Miller alongside Jeff Hoogland. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, Nick.
It's a Standard Open, which means you're in the sideboard.
Yep.
Number 2 on the Player of the Year race.
Yep.
You know, fighting back for that number 1 slot that you had for basically the entirety of Season 1.
Yeah, starting with that first Open.
Yeah. But you're here, grinding it again. You've got your Players' Championship qualification already in the bag.
Yep.
But now you're just coming after a Player of the Year race.
Yep. It feels good to have the PC slot locked early.
Yeah. Get the pressure off,
Yep.
then you can start playing. And you're playing a deck that I think a lot of people would expect to see you sleeve up. A 3-color deck.
Yep.
A grindy, mid-rangey control deck.
Yeah, and one of the things that, in addition to being grindy, it can close, which is one of the things that I really like to do with these more mid-range and control style decks. Like the dirt will do nothing plan isn't really good in a field full of humans.
Yeah. So you're an Abzan Seasons Past deck.
Yep.
We saw the Seasons Past, shell emerge at the Pro Tour, and people have kind of been doing their own iterations of that deck, moving it forward. We've seen Sultai. You have Abzan.
Yep.
Why do you want white in this shell?
So the white, I feel, really fixes problems that the deck has. The first is that Ormondal is very difficult to deal with, as well as troublesome permanents such as Cryptolith Rites or Pyromancer's Goggles, and Anguish in Making is just a really sweet, clean answer to all of that. Mm-hmm. Sorin is also a way to buffer your life total, and it's mostly just an upgrade from Ob Nixilis.
What we really want to talk about when you splash white, though, is the Dragon Lord.
Dragon Lord Jamoka has been one of the most fantastic Dark Petition targets in this deck. It started in the sideboard, and then during all of my testing, I was like, I'm bringing it in against Collected Company, I'm bringing it in against the blue-red decks, I'm bringing it in against the decks with Secure the Waste. Like, it's just an MVP. Reality Smashers, almost nothing can attack through it outside of like Dragon Lord Atarka. It wins you races by gaining you life. And the biggest thing it does, I mentioned the Collected Company decks, is making those decks play on their turn makes your Languishes unbeatable. The fact that they can't gas up immediately after you clear the board means they're never going to beat you.
Right, and that was a problem with the green-black decks at the start, was that they had problems with the Collected Company deck. Now you kind of have some answers to that. Make them play an honest game.
Correct. The other reason this deck I think is better than the traditional Seasons Past that we saw emerge from the Pro Tour is that the inclusion of Sylvan Advocate and Tireless Tracker really allow us to pressure our opponent while we're taking control of the game. In addition to being a solid brick wall as a 2/3 for 2, Sylvan Advocate turns that corner very quickly when we make our 6 land drop, not only because of his own 4 power, but because he makes all of our creature lands much more potent as well.
Right, and you got all the creature lands in here that you can kind of pack into the deck.
We've got a lot of tapped lands, but they're all very powerful and they allow us to cast all of our spells very consistently. And Hissing Quagmire, in addition to being fixing, is also just 4 more removal spells a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm. And we saw even Sam Black kind of move the green-black deck. Once he moved to the Great Aurora, he had the Tireless Tracker and the Sylvan Advocate plan. You have that going on as well in this.
Yeah, the difference between this deck and that deck is that we don't have a lot of the air or dead space that he has in like cards like Explosive Vegetation and Nissa's Pilgrimage, where it's just, you're playing 30 or 35 mana sources in your deck.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we've got a ton of removal spells, which you come to expect in this type of deck. Languish, Anguish Unmaking, Ruinous Path, Ultimate Prize, Grasp of Darkness, but then also you got the sweet targets that you can grab, like the Virulent Plague. You've got Pulse Marassa is another one-of target.
Yep. Read the Bones is actually a singleton in this deck as well.
We know all the kill spells while they're here. Go over kind of your one-ofs and your targets for Dark Petition.
Okay, so Pulse of Marassa was another one of the big upgrades I feel like we had for this deck over the PT list. They were playing Nissa's Renewal as their life gain spell, and what Pulse of Marassa allows you to do is it allows you to gain life with Dark Petition on turn 6, which is like a really important point. Like, if you survive to that point, usually they can steal the game by playing their Reckless Bushwhacker now and hasting a bunch of creatures. That extra 6 life really puts you over the top. It also allows you to trade off your things like Sylvan Advocate, Tireless Tracker, aggressive early, and then gain them back in the late game when you start generating advantage. Read the Bones is a one-of in this deck list as well, mostly to get with Dark Petition when you want to just draw a couple cards right away with it on turn 5. And that's another one of the things that I feel makes the deck better against the aggressive decks is we don't have all these cards that require us to pay a bunch of life just to play Magic. So our life total is a little bit higher than it would normally be.
Plague great against all the tokens decks. Green-white tokens is just the deck to beat right now. It's just winning every event.
Correct, yeah. One of the most important things to note when playing with Virulent Plague, especially game 1 against the green-white tokens decks, is that you can't just play it aggressively on turn 3, because they're all playing for Dramoka's command. So when you play the Plague, you want to make sure that you're clearing away their board with it, so that way even if they Dramoka's command you right away, you're still getting value out of the card.
just another sweeper.
Correct, yeah. Think of it as like language number 5, and if it happens to stick around and take over the game, that's all upside.
Right. Okay, Transgress the Mind, you got some discard, you got your Planeswalkers here to kind of close it out alongside your creature lands, your tireless trackers and stuff.
Seasons Past it's such a powerful draw engine. Like that was the Dark Petition Seasons Past draw engine was so huge that the team that played at the PT came up with. In this deck, it not only gets back Evolving Wilds at 0 cost, but also our Blighted Fen and our creature land. So again, you don't feel bad trading those off aggressively early because you're going to loop back through them.
Right, you can always come back and get them. All right, so you got 1 Seasons Pass in the main with 2 Dark Petition in the main, correct?
Yep.
And then you can move into the sideboard to get your 2nd Seasons Pass, basically so when 1 gets removed, you have a backup.
Correct, yeah. The most important thing with the 2nd Seasons Pass is in the Transgress the Mind mirrors. If they happen to exile your 1 Seasons Pass, we can't get it back with something like Den Protector out of the sideboard or something like that, so we need an actual 2nd copy of Seasons Pass to make sure we always have access to it in those grindy matchups.
Right. Speaking of Den Protector, here in the sideboard, combos also with Pulse of Marasa in a pretty comical fashion.
Yeah, if you just like, it's 8 mana, block a guy, gain 6 life, do it as much as you need to. It rebuys all of your threats. This deck never runs out of threats between Seasons Past and Den Protector. Den Protector is also great against the aggressive decks. You just basically play it as a 2 mana removal spell. You just play it out there and trade with their guy, and you're super happy to use it for that.
Kalitas, a card I'm kind of surprised not to see in the main deck. You know, it's very good against all these, graveyard-centric decks and things like that. That kind of...
Yeah, it's a tough call. Kalitas is really awkward against Reflector Mage, and I feel like it doesn't take over the game in the same way a Dragonlord Dromoka does. So, for instance, if you just play your Kalitas on 4 and they collected Company at your end step and Reflector Mage it back to your hand, that loss of tempo is huge.
Okay. So really they're just for specific matchups where you know you need it.
Correct, yeah, or it's also good for a little bit extra life game in the matches that are going to go long.
More discard here, you got additional Transgresses and Duresses to fight the control decks.
Yep, and then Duress is also important because it gives us another 1-drop in those matchups where we really want Seasons Past to be drawing 6 and 7 cards when we cast it.
Okay. Really got to get the full value so you can get 0 all the way up.
Correct, yeah, actually I cast it last round and got 0 through 5 and it was just wonderful.
Seems like what you want to be doing.
Yep.
Another Plague and then Infinite Obliteration. We saw this back when Eldrazi was all over the place and people needed as many copies of this as possible.
Yep, this is kind of a card that you could play in your main deck in this deck, depending on what format you're expecting. So the Virulent Plague could also be the Infinite Obliteration if you're expecting more of the blue-red Eldrazi and green-red Ramp as opposed to more tokens and black-white control. But I'm expecting more of the former rather than the latter, so I've got the Plague in the main this weekend.
Now, a card up your alley that I don't see in this deck is Gitrog Monster. No love for the frog?
So I mentioned Reflector Mage being a huge tempo loss on your Kalitas earlier. It's savage when that card bounces your 5-drop. Dragonlord Dromoka again gets the pass because of the fact that they can't Reflector Mage it the turn you play it because they can't play something on your turn after it's resolved.
Okay.
So not to mention it races in a way that Gitrog just doesn't allow you to. Tireless Tracker already lets us get value out of our land, so it kind of overlaps with the slot that Gitrog would fill.
All right, I'll let it go. Dragonlord Dromoka is good enough that I'll accept no Gitrog here.
Okay.
All right, so the deck's been doing pretty well for you. I assume you've tested quite a bit. You like where this is positioned?
Yeah, I think this deck is really well positioned against the white aggressive decks, the black-white control, and the Cryptolith rights decks. The Ramp matchup and the Eldrazi-based decks are a little bit more difficult for you to beat. Reality Smasher is a real pain in your side. That's one of my first cards I like to take with Infinite Obliteration in those matchups. But yeah, I think if you're expecting those 3 decks to be pretty popular, this deck's an excellent choice.
Awesome. Well, Jeff, thanks for joining me here in the sideboard. Stay tuned to StarCityGames.com all weekend long for the action here in Atlanta.